It is a triple whammy that has impacted the Indian rupee since January this year. Brokerage house Nomura saying the rupee could reach 82 against the dollar by third quarter of 2022.
Our lead story tonight, well, the rupee is falling and falling. It's now nearly at 80 rupees to a dollar.
Our currency has weakened to another record low today, and this time it has gone down to 79.37 per dollar.
Hi everyone. The Indian rupee has been on a downward spiral since early 2022, and recently it has reached almost a record low of 80 against US dollars. The rupee has depreciated nearly 6% since January this year. Import cost is all-time high, trade deficit has doubled, current account deficit has also gone significantly high. Is Indian economy under stress? Do we have enough forex reserves to save our economy? Is India going to be the next Sri Lanka? And most importantly, how this currency depreciation is affecting us, the common people? To understand this, first we need to understand few things. Number 1, what is rupee depreciation? Number 2, why is rupee falling? Number 3, what is the effect of weak rupee on the economy? Number 4, and maybe the most important one, how is it affecting you and me, the common people? And again, what RBI is doing to control it? Currency depreciation is a fall in the value of a currency in terms of its exchange rate versus other currencies. In this case, we are discussing the depreciation of rupee against dollar. In other words, if you wanted to buy a dollar in January this year, it would have costed you rupees 74. But if you want to buy the same dollar today, it will cost you 79 rupees. So the purchasing power of rupee has been depreciated by almost 6%. Now, as we perform almost all of our international trades in dollars, everything we import, we have to pay 6% more, as the dollar has become 6% more expensive than January this year. Now the question is, who decides the exchange rate? The answer is no one. In a floating regime, exchange rates are generally determined by the market forces of supply and demand of foreign exchange. Now, why is rupee falling? The value of the Indian rupee to the US dollar works on a demand and supply basis. If there is a high demand of the US dollar, the value of the Indian rupee depreciates and vice versa. The rupee's fall these days are mainly due to 3 reasons. Number 1, trade deficit. India's June trade deficit widened to a record $25.63 billion. Last year, this deficit was $9.6 billion only. The reason is the rise in crude oil and coal imports. This is adding to fears of further pressure on the rupee. Now let us understand how the high crude oil prices are affecting the value of rupee. India depends heavily on crude oil imports to meet over 80% of its energy requirements. Whenever oil prices see an uptick, it tends to pressurize the rupee as India's imports will soar over higher crude oil prices. In May last year, the Brent crude cost was $68.5 per barrel. This year in May, the Brent crude touched around $110 per barrel, which has now jumped to $122 per barrel. If oil prices are rising, it means imports are rising continuously. It pushes up the demand of the US dollar, which strengthens the dollar against the rupee, or we can say weakening the rupee against dollar. The Indian rupee has been on the decline since January this year. This erodes the purchasing power of Indian currency in the international market. As per the preliminary trade data released by the Ministry of Commerce and Industry, in the first quarter of the current fiscal year ending June, the merchandise trade deficit more than doubled from quarter 1 of last fiscal year. In quarter 1 of 2021, the trade deficit was $31.42 billion. And quarter 1 of this fiscal year has seen a trade deficit of $70.25 billion. However, a robust surplus in services trade and forex reserve of over $590 billion provide confidence to the government that it can manage external payments. On the other hand, Russia-Ukraine conflict causing supply chain disruption is also a very big reason to increase imports. Another important reason behind the rupee fall is a very strong dollar overseas and foreign capital outflows. The US Federal Reserve recently increased the interest rates, and the return on dollar assets increased compared to those of emerging markets such as India. As a result, there is a heavy foreign fund outflows from the domestic markets as the foreign institutional investors, the FIIs, have sold shares worth $28.4 billion so far this year. This has outstripped the $11.8 billion sell-off seen during the global financial crisis of 2008. As money flows out of India, the rupee-dollar exchange rate gets impacted, depreciating the rupee further. Now, what is the effect of weak rupee on the economy? Since India mostly depends on imports, including crude oil, metals, electronics, etc., the country makes payments in US dollars. Now, if the rupee is weak, it has to pay more for the same quantity of items. In such cases, the cost of raw materials and production goes up, which gets passed on to the consumers. And this creates inflation in the market. Now, let's understand this with a simple example. India wants to import an item worth $1 million from a foreign country. In January, it would have costed 7 crore 40 lakh rupees as the exchange value of dollar against rupee was 74 rupees per dollar. But if India wants to import the same item today, India will be paying 7 crore 90 lakhs rupees, which is 50 lakhs more as the exchange value of dollar is now 79 rupees per dollar. Now the biggest impact of weakening rupee is inflation. Given India imports more than 80% of its crude oil, being a net importer, India depends on overseas goods for its requirements. Since they are imported and paid for in the US dollars, the landed price rises and leads to inflation. And as a result, household expenses will go up. Prices of fuel like diesel, petrol and cooking gas, which are already high, will increase further as India heavily depends on crude oil imports. With increased fuel price, transport cost and production cost will increase. With rising transportation and production cost, there will be an indirect impact on the daily household items you consume. Electronics are also said to be expensive. Devices like mobile phones, laptop, TV and solar panels, among other household electrical goods, will now cost more since several components of such devices are imported. And for obvious reasons, overseas education, foreign trips will be more expensive. Current account deficit will increase. Now, current account deficit or CAD is a trade measurement where a country's imports of goods and services exceeds its exports. In other words, the difference between import and export is current account deficit. If your export is more than import, then the CAD will be negative. Unfortunately, India being a high import country, our CAD is positive and further increased these days. Dollar debt will be costlier. India's dollar debt will also face the heat. While India's external government debt is at a low of around 4% of GDP, our non-government external debt amounts to 16% of GDP. And as 44% of this debt is not hedged, a weak rupee will be a reason to worry for these private sector companies. Now there is also a positive side. A weakening domestic currency boosts exports as shipments get more competitive and foreign buyers gain more purchasing power. Now let us understand this with an easy example. India has a product to export that costs 1 crore rupees. Now for a global buyer, if they wanted to buy the same product in January 2022, it would have costed them $1,35,135. But today, as the value of rupee has depreciated to rupees 79 per dollar, the same product of 1 crore rupees can be sold at $1,26,582 only instead of $1,35,135. This makes this particular item more competitive in the global market. On the other hand, exporters who are already into an ongoing contract or have their contract on US dollars valuation will now make more money for the same product or service. Now again, let's understand with an example. Let's say an Indian software company is in a contract with a foreign company for a particular service and it charges $1 million per month. Now as the value of dollar has grown by 5 rupees per dollar, it will make another 5 million, that is another 50 lakh rupees per month. Now what RBI is doing to prevent the fall? RBI has recently taken a revolutionary decision, that is, it has allowed Indian exporters to do trade in Indian currency instead of dollars. Earlier this month, RBI has also announced few measures to prevent the rupee fall, and few of those are incremental NRE or FCNRB deposits were exempted from CRR and SLR till November 4. Banks were allowed to raise NRE, FCNRB deposits without reference to regulations on interest rates. Foreign private investors' investment norms regarding government bonds were relaxed. Norms eased on residual maturity for FPI investments in government and corporate debt. Now, the most important part, what do we understand from this study? We can't ignore the fact that the current scenario is of a weak global demand and persistent volatility. The slowdown in the global economy is dampening exports. However, June's year-on-year merchandise export rose 16.78% to $37.94 billion for India. India has a robust surplus in services trade and forest reserves of over $590 billion. That literally means if India requires to pay its all foreign debts, it has the capability to do that. The Indian currency is in a relatively better position than other global currencies against the dollar despite a sharp fall in rupee. In short, India is a very big economy to be crashed due to a global economic turmoil. But it is also a fact that it will get affected. A certain percentage of our forex reserve may get eroded. We may face the heat of inflation and increased household expenses. But if we refer the past data, Indian economy will bounce back and set a new high soon. That's all for today. If you have enjoyed the video, please do like the video, subscribe the channel and share the video with your connections. We will come back with a new topic. Till then, bye-bye.